Welcome to Arizona Bill Watch, the show where you get satisfaction if you're not getting it from your state legislators. We report and comment on what happens at the state legislature and alert you on what is coming up next. And now, Arizona Bill Watch.
Hello everyone, welcome to Arizona Bill Watch for another lively discussion of important and controversial bills. I am your host, Jose Borrajero. Thank you for watching. There is a lot going on at the Capitol these days, so stay tuned because we have a fantastic show for you today. But before we do that, some housekeeping items. Number one, we would love for you to watch the whole show from beginning to end. However, you may also fast forward to the bills of your choice by using the handy chart that we have placed down below. Secondly, if you like what you see, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot to us. Third, it costs money to do what we do. So if you like what you see, you may contribute by going to our website, azpeopleslobbyist.com. So with all that out of the way, let's look at the first bill. Hello, we are back to full strength this week. We have both co-hosts with me, Archie Dixon and Gloria Fox.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, guys. You know what happened? Last week was quite a week. We had two major things that happened that were kind of incredible. One of the things that happened was the aggregate expenditure limit for schools passed handily. They got the 2/3 majority in both chambers. So now the schools will have that extra $1.4 billion that were allocated to them with the budget that passed last year, but they would not have been able to collect because they would be over the aggregate limit, except that the aggregate limit may be overridden with a 2/3 majority vote of both chambers, and that happened. So the schools will be very happy. We will not have to hear any more about them being underfunded. Right?
Correct.
Right. They'll be happy with it. We won't have to face that anymore. And if you believe that, I got a bridge. All right. The second thing that happened was the budget. The Republicans had come up with what they call a skinny budget. It was more or less a continuation of last year. We know that we are in for hard times because of inflation and recession and everything else, so we cannot be spending a whole lot. So they came up with this bill, which is pretty good, relatively speaking, but it was a bill that the governor just didn't like. But of course, she's not going to like anything that comes out of the Republicans. Mm-hmm. And we had the 31 votes in the House and the 16 votes in the Senate that they required to pass this thing, except that we had one representative that decided for whatever reason, she wanted to vote against it. So she joined the Democrats. She joined Katie Hobbs and torpedoed the budget.
That's right.
Can we use names?
I don't see any reason why not. You used mine.
Yeah, and I think we should call them out.
Yeah, no, it's Representative Liz Harris of District, I believe it's District 13.
Really?
Yeah. So she's, we got rid of Boyer, we got rid of Heather Carter, we got rid of a whole lot of people who were betraying us all the time and joining the Democrats. Well, we gained one. Now we have Liz Harris to take their place. So anyway, that's what happened last week, and we'll start looking now at what's coming up next week, and we'll see. House Bill HB 2309, short title, Sovereign Authority Law Enforcement. This bill is going to be in the House Military Affairs and Public Safety Committee on the 13th, which I believe is Monday. Introduced by Representative Jones. And this is kind of, I don't know how to classify this bill. Essentially, what it does is that it prohibits the use of any resources to cooperate with federal actions inconsistent with Arizona law regarding the authority of state and local law enforcement agencies. It is not, the way I read it, it's not a sanctuary movement as such, because it doesn't have to do with just ignoring the federal law. It has to do with their invoking the Arizona Constitution, which says that they're unable to do this. Whether that runs afoul of the federal Constitution, I don't know. But I don't really see the point of it, other than they are expecting the federal government to do a whole lot of mischief, and they don't want to participate in it. The thing to notice is that this is not something that would oppose the federal government actions. It would be that they would not assist. And there's a difference, between opposing and just not cooperating. I still don't see the point of it, other than, as I said, to head off or try to head off overreach by the federal government. So I don't know how to whether I'm in favor or opposed to this thing. Well, how about you guys?
Okay. So
You're looking at me?
Yeah, well,
You expecting me to
so-
respond? You know how I'm going to
Archie-
respond.
Archie and I already had a little conversation about this, so go ahead.
This is a piece of junk. Understand, in 1912, Congress made the state of Arizona a state. We weren't a state before that. We were merely a territory. And Congress can remove us from being a state by their action again, and we will become a territory. Now, I don't know what the Arizona Constitution provides, but under the Supremacy Clause, the U.S. Constitution, the amendments to the Constitution, the treaties of the United States, and the laws enacted by U.S. Congress are the supreme laws of the land. And we must abide by those laws, and we must enforce those laws. And for this to come along and say we're not going to enforce federal laws and treaties and the U.S. and the U.S. Constitution is pure idiocy.
So would you like to know why I am in favor of this?
Go ahead. I'm just telling you why it's not a good bill. It's a terrible bill.
And I appreciate your response to it, but going back to what you said, I think this was to head off what the federal government is doing. I remember under the Obama administration where they were talking, and under this administration, so this is Obama 2.0, that they want to federalize our law enforcement. And I think that's not the Constitution. We're supposed to be controlling our own states under the Constitution. And so I think this is trying to head that off, which is why sometimes I think at this point we need to overstep whatever it is to stop the federal government from their overreach. And that's why I'm in favor of this.
To the best of my knowledge, the state of Arizona has never, ever seceded from the Union, nor have they declared that they are a sovereign individual entity, separate and distinct from the U.S. government. Until they do so, this law is just junk. You must enforce federal laws. You take an oath that you will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States, as well as the Constitution of Arizona and the laws of the state of Arizona. And when you fail to do that, you have violated your oath. And with that, you can be removed. And the federal government, by an act of Congress, can remove the state categorization for the state of Arizona and make us a territory again, if that's what you want.
And what about when the federal government overreaches? Because I don't honestly believe that they're going to go, maybe they will when if they have a Democrat majority again, but to federalize the police force, which is what they want to do. Like I said, they wanted to do it under Obama. They want to do it now. And so I think taking steps to avoid that is the way to go, regardless of because the federal government is in every way, shape, and form overreaching, which is saying they're going to control us.
How does this prevent Congress from enacting a law federalizing all police forces? How does it do it?
I'm not saying it stops them, and they very well may.
Well, I mean, we've
And-
still got the supremacy clause, and if they enact a law, the state of Arizona is bound by it. Period.
Well, I like this because I'm going to be a rebel.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a tie actually because we have one for, one against, and one that's not sure. So
Which is
we
fair.
have a tie on this one. Senate Bill HB 1140, short title, Elections, Voting Centers Prohibited. This bill is going to be heard in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday, the 13th. It was introduced by Senator Hoffman, and the description is kind of long, a long way to say what they want to say, which basically boils down to that they're not going to allow, under this bill, these voting centers will not be allowed except whether you call them voting centers or whatever else you call it, they have to be within, in other words, you have to vote within your neighborhood, which is kind of, if not the same, at least similar to what we had before where you voted in your precinct. So this will be pretty close to voting in the precinct. In my opinion, the closer to a voter's residence that the vote takes place, the better it is. So I don't see a whole lot of point where people going, like to Mesa or Chandler to vote when they live in Phoenix. I don't see any reason for it. Anytime you have a situation like this, it's more likely that you would have mischief, So even though it's not the end of the world, I still don't like the idea of these voting centers. So to that extent, I think this is a good bill.
I am in agreement with you with what it says. I think that the polling places should be located in a person's district, neighborhood, whatever. And
Well,
Archie?
I think to the extent that it goes, it's probably a good bill. The problem with it is, though, if you look at the page 1, it uses the term shall not, all right? And again, legislators still have not gotten the point that the word shall is not mandatory, it's permissive. The other problem that I have with it is that this bill was, the primary sponsor is Hoffman. And if you look at another bill introduced by Hoffman, which is Bill 1141, it authorizes the use of voting centers. Now, in one spot he's saying no voting centers, and the next spot he said voting centers are just absolutely great. Now, then the question is, if they both pass, which one of them controls?
Right.
Well, that's governed by Title I, Section 245, which says that the last one to pass is the one that controls. So we don't know how this is going to go. Now, the other point about this is, and you both were talking about it, using the precinct voting, there is another bill pending which specifically provides that the Board of Supervisors will provide enough precinct voting polling places for all of the voters in the precinct to vote without going to the voting centers.
Okay, the problem that you alluded to or mentioned actually is a problem that I don't see how it could be avoided. It happens all the time. You have bills dealing with a subject, and when you don't know which one is going to pass. So you have one that does one thing, and you do another one that addresses that from a different angle, because we don't know which one is going to pass. For example, the one that you mentioned about that it allows the voting centers. No, it doesn't allow the voting centers. We already have voting centers. What it does is it mentions something about what happens within the voting center. Now, that would become totally irrelevant if we didn't have voting centers. Okay, so if this bill were to pass, that other bill would be totally irrelevant because you don't have voting centers anymore. So, and I don't know how you fix that. You have a bill that does something, and then you have something that would do. And you're right. If they both were to pass, it would be a conflict. but it's not the extent of the conflict that you're mentioning here, because it's just a matter of the one will rule over the other. So to me, that's not a big it's not a problem. So
Okay.
Senate Bill SB 1213, short title, Legislative Council Procedures Manual. And this bill is going to be in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday, the 13th. It was introduced by Senator Kern, and it's a very short bill, very simple. And all it does, it says that you're going to substitute for Secretary of State, you're going to substitute the Legislative Council, meaning that the person responsible for the procedures manual would be a committee, which would be the Legislative Council, as opposed to the Secretary of State. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? From my point of view, it seems that presumably the Legislative Council, whether they're good or bad, it's questionable, but presumably they would be bipartisan or nonpartisan, whereas the Secretary of State would always be partisan, whether it's on our side or their side, it's always partisan. So making it nonpartisan seems to be a good idea, since this would apply to everyone. So on the basis of that, I think it's probably a good bill. But you guys may find some flaw with it.
I don't think it's I agree with you with, as it is written, I agree that it should be the Legislative Council, and with that thought that, yes, the Secretary of State is partisan. But I'm curious what you think, Archie, about this one.
Well, as Jose say, it's a very short bill. Unfortunately, it's not short enough. I should take all of the words out of it and get rid of it. The Secretary of State has her own legal counsel, right? And she is charged in various places with putting together, the Secretary of State, is charged in various places with putting together the election manual. And the election manual has to follow the statutes. So all she's got to do is listen to her, their own personal legal advisors. They don't need the Legislative Council to do that. I mean, it just says.
Okay, yeah.
I have a comment to make to that real quick.
Go ahead.
So the Secretary of State's, though, legal counsel, in my opinion, is going to be partisan to the Secretary of State.
The legal counsel for the Secretary of State is the Attorney General.
That doesn't matter to me. Like I said, they're going to be, and I think taking it out of their hand and putting it in what hopefully is a more bipartisan Legislative Council is a better choice.
Yeah, keep in mind that both the Secretary of State and the Attorney General are elected officials, and they are partisan. So if you want to have something that's nonpartisan, then neither one of them would satisfy properly. Now, yes, you can say that the responsibility of the Attorney General is to be fair and balanced,
But we know how that goes.
but we know that that does not happen very often. Okay. And by the way, the Secretary of State now, it's a man, it's not a her.
Well, I know. I mean, it's the thing, secretary, I guess.
No, it's because the previous one was a woman, but now we have Fontes.
Well, but it's my sexism showing up, I guess.
Of course, and I wanted to
Secretary is a female.
I wanted to bring out his sexism in this. Anyway, so again, we have a situation. I didn't get what you think about the bill, Gloria.
Oh, I'm, as I said, it's real short, but if it achieves what it wants to achieve, then yes, I am for it.
Yeah, I'm for it
Yeah.
too. So we have a 2-to-1 split here.
Yes.
Senate Bill SB 1471, short titled ballot tabulation hand count comparison. And this bill is going to be in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday. Are you guys keeping track of how many bills are going to be in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday?
Mhm.
They may not be able to get through to all of them. That's going to be a lot of them. Anyway, this one was introduced by Senator Kavanaugh, and it simply requires a sample of the 2022 general election ballots to be counted by both a tabulator and by hand. Now, what this thing is intended to do, I suppose, is to settle once and for all whether it's a good idea to limit to hand counts or whether we can have tabulators. Because what it's intended to do is to compare the result of the two, not only for accuracy and consistency, but also to figure out how many man hours it takes to do it so that we can figure out the cost. Because there are those that say, no, it doesn't cost any more to do hand counts, and there's others that say it's extremely more expensive. So if we do this the way that it's described in the bill, we will have an answer to that question. And to that extent, it should be moved forward.
Go ahead, Archie. I'm indifferent. I'm not sure because I have different opinions on this. Go ahead.
Well, my first thought on it is this to become a statute? If not, if it's not a statute, then what function does it serve? It's not binding on anyone. Nobody has to do anything under the provisions of this. I think some of the provisions of it are great.
They do have to. Well, it's just like any bill. If they don't do it, so what? I mean,
This is not a bill. Point out to me anywhere on this where it says it's an amendment or the creation of a bill. It's not amending anything by its terms, and it's not creating anything by its terms. It's just a statement by Senator Kavanaugh that this is to be done. Well, he doesn't have any more force and effect than I do. If I called up, the county court recorder's office and said, this is what I want you to do you think you'd pay any attention to me? This is not a bill. It's not amending a code section, and it's not adding a code section, so it has no effect on anyone at any time. Besides the fact that it has a sunset provision where it expires on February the 29th, 24. So
the whole idea behind this is to determine whether it is accurate to do a hand count, which is more accurate. And that's the purpose, to find that out, number one. Number two, to find out exactly how many man hours it takes so that when we have legislation that calls for something, we can go back and say, look, the cost is the same one way or the other, or we can say, no, the cost is different, and this is why we should or we shouldn't. Yeah, we don't have that information right now. There's people speculating. There's people out there that are claiming, they say, no, the hand count is just as quick, the hand count is just as easy, the hand count is just as inexpensive, so let's do it. There's other people that say, no, it's going to cost more, etc. So how do you settle that? If you make that if you go to a hand count for everything, and it turns out that the hand count is a lot more expensive and it takes a lot longer, where are you? What this is a test to find out once and for all which one would be more beneficial.
Jose, I do not disagree with that. The only thing that I have pointed out to you is that it's not a bill, and it's not an amendment to a bill, and it's not a binding on anyone.
An amendment to a bill is not binding on anyone unless it includes a clause there as to what the penalty would be for not doing it. And we know, we've discussed this at length many times,
Oh, of course we have.
a lot of bills do not have that.
Well,
and they're still bills, I mean,
Well, but I mean, once it becomes a law, then the county recorder and the board of supervisors are bound by the law. This is not even a law. It doesn't amend a bill. It doesn't create a bill. It's just a statement by Senator Kavanaugh that he would like the county recorder to do this work. And if I were the county recorder, I would say, Mr. Kavanaugh, you didn't provide me any extra money to hire people to do this, so thanks, but no thanks. I'm busy.
Okay. You're right about the fact that it's not an amendment to an existing statute. It is a new statute.
Give me the statute number.
It doesn't have a statute number yet because it has not been passed.
But and every bill that we're going to be discussing today, they either provide that they are creating a new statute or they are amending a statute. This does none of that.
If they're creating a new statute, there is no number. If they're amending a statute, there is a number. And if they're adding to a statute, there is a number.
Uh-huh.
But anytime you have a brand new statute, which this one is, there's no number until it is, there's a term for it, which I can't remember. Once it's signed by the governor, it's, and I forget the name of it, chaptered. It's chaptered and then it becomes part of the ARS. Okay, so the question then becomes: is it a good idea to know for sure, one way or the other, whether the hand count is a good thing or not? And this will give us the answer.
And
So,
listening to both, I agree that regardless of what it is, I think it is something that needs to be done. I think we need to find out, though my guess is a hand count will take longer, just my guess, but if this is the way they want to prove one way or another, yes.
Yeah, right now we're all guessing at it, and so we can argue until hell freezes over, and nobody knows the answer because it's never happened. So this will give us a way to find out.
Well, of course, there are other bills that are pending that require a hand count. So I mean,
Exactly, and then an argument against that would be, well, it's going to take a lot longer to do, and it's going to be more expensive, and we have no argument because we don't know. Nobody knows. This will give us the opportunity to know for sure whether it's one way or the other.
So what do you say, Archie? Yes or no on this?
No,
No.
it doesn't do anything for
Okay.
anyone to anybody. It's not binding on anybody.
Okay,
It's just a statement.
okay, and I say yes, and you?
I say yes.
Oh, okay. Senate Bill 1566. Voter registration requirement for 10 years. This bill, again, it's one of many that it's going to be heard in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday the 13th. And just a side note here, folks, if you want to, if you want to be really entertained, Monday the 13th is a good day to be at the Capitol and going to the Senate Elections Committee hearings, and I don't know what time they are, but that's going to be a lively.
I think it will too.
Yeah, because the bills that are going to be heard there, they are quite controversial, and of course that's the reason we are discussing them. We only discuss important and controversial bills here. But anyway, this bill introduced by Senator Carroll. It's definitely going to be controversial because it calls for re-registration every 10 years. In other words, when you register to vote, it's good only for 10 years, and then you have to re-register every 10 years. And the rationale behind that is that it is kind of an automatic purging of the bad registrations, because if the person is dead, presumably cannot re-register, and moved, if you moved out of the area or whatever. So there are some good points there, but then there are those that say, no, you can't do that. So anyway, that's the whole idea. And Gloria, what do you think?
I believe just with that premise that yes, that this is a good bill. I mean, I think it should, our voter rolls should be reevaluated every, in my opinion, 5 years, but we'll go with 10 years. There's a lot in this bill about how everybody's supposed to talk to each other, the Secretary of State or the DMV is supposed to. So as long as everybody does what they're supposed to do, and not everybody does, that's why I think that, yes, this is a good bill.
Archie?
Well, I think the intent of it is probably a good bill, but unfortunately, you see, the purpose of this bill is to clean up the voter registration rolls, and we already have a number of bills that, if they're just followed, will do the same thing. Their county recorder is, they're supposed to pass along notices of death and notices of somebody moving out of the state. Now, to me, the problem with this, where it automatically your registration automatically terminates after 10 years, is that you're running into a real problem of disenfranchising people because, let's understand, people don't follow the laws. They don't know what the laws are. So all of a sudden, I'm disenfranchised. I go down to vote and they say, sorry, you're not registered. You can't vote. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to yell and scream that I've been disenfranchised. And I have been. So, I mean,
actually, no, you haven't, because this also calls for the notice to the voter. So the only way that you would not get that notice is if you moved out of the area, in which case you're supposed to re-register anyway. Otherwise, you would not be able to vote. So the disenfranchisement thing is what it is. It's that it's a major inconvenience for people to take 10 minutes to fill out a little form that registers you. 10 minutes in 10 years. Yeah, that's hard. That's difficult.
And that's where what I was thinking also. We've become such a society that we don't want to have to do anything. We want everything to just be done for us. We don't want to be held accountable. And I think that if voting is important enough to you, you'll take the 10 minutes out of your time, like Jose said, to do what you have to do to vote. And every 10 years, yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so
going to disenfranchise going to be another reason for a challenge to the election.
Well, everybody is disenfranchised about everything. I mean, everybody has an.
In the last 2 years, the D word has been the number one word used
Exactly.
in politics. Okay.
D and R.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, unless you make some provision for certain categories of individuals out there, you are running a major risk of disenfranchising. And whenever you get somebody that's let's say my age, that is mentally deficient like I am, then we don't really know that even though I got a letter that may have been delivered to the guy on the street next door to me, block over from me, which my mail frequently is, I may never get the notice that I've been, I have to re-register. I've been disenfranchised. So unless you take some steps to clarify those problems, this is a real risk of disenfranchising any number of voters within the state, and it is a basis for a new challenge. And for those of you that don't know, a statute means exactly what a judge sitting on the bench looking at it says it means, and it means nothing more and nothing less. And this is going to be a disenfranchising bill. Maybe
what needs to go out, or what should be in this bill, is that the process is supposed to start a year before the 10, like at 9 years, to make sure that everybody gets their mail and so on and so forth. That way, if you've been informed and you didn't do what you had to do, then that's on you. So maybe starting it like a year before and making sure that the voter rolls are good. I think that should be in
everything when it comes to politics and law and everything else is a balance. You have to balance the danger that some people may be disenfranchised versus the danger of having people voting who should not be voting, or people voting other people's votes when they shouldn't be. So you have to have some kind of balance. To my way of thinking, the balance lays on making sure that everybody who votes is eligible to vote.
Yes.
And if that means that some person who is mentally deficient is disenfranchised, well, maybe since he's mentally deficient, he shouldn't be voting in the first place.
Right.
But, look, the legislature took care of that last year, if you recall. I mean, they passed a bill that says that the Consulate General of Mexico can establish what the residence is for somebody walking across the border, and we must accept that. And it also provides that that same individual can go to get a driver's license and register to vote. And they are here illegally, and they're not a citizen. They're not even a resident of this state. But our legislature, in its infinite wisdom, has already provided that people here illegally can vote.
Well, that's a
And
different
this
issue.
does, well, but I mean, this is not going to solve that problem. It's already there. And so,
Which
no.
is a problem with so many of these, because in this bill, it says that you're not supposed to vote if you're an illegal, and it talks about the DMV.
Problem with that is that the federal law specifically provides that you do not have to be a citizen to vote. All right, what are you going to do with that?
Like I told you.
Yeah, well, we have our hands tied. That's why we have a two-tier election system here, where some people can vote for the only for the federal, and some can vote for both. So we're not going to solve that now, but I think that we can move a step closer if you have this bill enacted.
Yep.
Senate Bill SB 1595. Short title: Early Ballots Identification Tabulation. This bill would be in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday the 13th. It was introduced by Senator Mesnard, and it makes several changes in the way that early ballots are delivered. But the most significant one is the fact that when you drop off a ballot, you have to show ID, which apparently you don't have to do now, and that is a major step in the right direction.
Okay, and so I answered my question during our little break, but so deposited by the voter at any polling place in the county.
Right, and again, you have a situation where you can say, well, that is contrary to another bill that says
Right.
you prohibit the voting centers.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the way it always is, because if this becomes effective and the other one does not, then this applies. If the other bill that says that you cannot have drop-off centers becomes the law, then this becomes irrelevant, because you would no longer be dropping ballots in the early ballots in a drop box. So yeah, there's an inconsistency because we don't know which bill is going to pass.
Right.
And if both pass, then one is going to be irrelevant.
Which bill are we talking about?
We're talking about 1595, the one that says that
Early ballots.
you have to show ID for dropping off early ballot.
Oh,
There you go.
well, you see, I apparently don't have that sheet on this one, yeah.
Well, that sounds like a personal problem to me.
I mean, it is a personal problem. I have nothing but personal problems with these bills, yeah. Well, I don't.
Archie, just take my word for it, and agree with me that this is a great, fantastic bill.
Well, I don't know what you're going to do about the fact that if I carry your ballot and to have it tabulated, and I give my ID to have your vote tabulated, that under another bill I have committed a felony.
No.
There
The
isn't.
only way that you have committed a felony is if you are untitled, if you're not titled to drop off that ballot.
Doesn't make any difference under that bill, Jose. The
No,
bill specific.
under the bill, it's very clear. The exception to the rule is that you're not going to be it's not going to be a felony. It's going to be perfectly okay if the person's bill that you drop off, it falls into one of the categories that are allowed. One is a member of the family. Another one, if you're a caretaker and this is a person under your care who cannot who cannot deliver the ballot for whatever reason. So under those circumstances, you're not going to be hauled to jail for. As a matter of fact, the way it is now, nobody's being hauled to jail, no matter what. But if we were to follow the law the way it's supposed to be, you can still bring in people's ballots as long as they fall into those categories.
Can I say something now?
Now you can say something.
There is a bill that is pending, which specifically provides that any person in possession of a voted or an unvoted early ballot is guilty of a felony if it is not in the name, if it's not the person whose name appears on the envelope. And it matters not whether you are a parent, a sibling, a child, a caretaker, anything. You are guilty of a felony, and
Okay,
there is no exceptions to it.
When that bill comes up for discussion, I'll be glad to oppose it.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you that bill is out there. And
But
you're
that
saying
doesn't
this
mean-
is a good bill, and there's another bill out there that makes it a felony. So maybe it's a good bill, and maybe it's not a good bill.
It's a good bill that has, the other bill is the bad one.
All right.
So when it comes up for discussion, when it is assigned to a committee hearing and we're here discussing that bill, then I'll say, hey, this is a bad bill.
Well, I may think the other one's a good bill. So, but, I'm just pointing out that these
There's
people
so much
really need to be
contradiction.
paying attention
Yeah.
to other bills that are being introduced.
But
And
again,
recognizing the conflict that is coming from these bills.
it's not a conflict. It's not a conflict. If you say, okay, it's a felony to bring a ballot in here that is not your ballot, but it has an inclusion in there that says except as, and then it says, these things, because they're already in the books. This law is already in the books that you can bring in unless, that you cannot bring in anybody's ballot unless it comes into these categories. So if there is another bill out there, which I'm not aware of, by the way, but if there's another bill out there that says that there's no exclusions, you cannot bring anyone's ballot, no matter what the circumstances are, then I would say to you, yeah, that bill, I agree with you, that bill is bad, let's not advance it. But that has nothing to do with whether this is a good bill or not. This bill, the only thing that,
I didn't say whether this was a good bill or not. I merely said that it is in conflict with another bill that is out there.
Which
So you
all
agree
of
with
this-
me that it's a good bill?
No, I'm not necessarily going to agree with you that it is a good bill. I mean, there are
That is a
things.
bad bill.
There are
So,
things about it that are good, but there are things about it that are not good.
Yes.
And I mean, at some point in time, we have to stop saying, well, okay, well, we're going to make a little bit of progress here. Well, you may or may not be making any progress because it's going to depend upon who's interpreting it and why.
Well,
And let me
that's
assure
true
you,
that's true of every single law that we pass. You said it many times that what the law means is what the jury or the judge says it means. So anytime we pass something, we're subject to being interpreted by the courts.
of course.
so Archie, as this bill as it is, what do you say? Yes or no? Should it pass or not?
No.
Okay.
And I'm on the fence, but I'm gonna say, because I'm gonna say yes. I'm on the fence about this
Okay.
one.
And I'm not on the fence. I think it's a good because the main thing is that you have to see again, we're missing the main point here. The main point is that you have to show ID so that you don't have that situation. You have to identify yourself.
But like with Archie, it conflicts with other bills, and that's the problem. And I wish the legislatures.
But it's not, but it's not a conflict if you really look at it carefully. So we're not going to resolve that at this point. We're just going to talk about the one bill, and so we have
Two yeses and a no.
2 yes and a no, and let's leave it at that. Senate Bill SB 1597, short title, Early Ballot On-Site Tabulation Requirement. It's going to be heard in the Senate Elections Committee on Monday, the 13th. It was introduced by Senator Mesnard. And it simply says that beginning with the 2024 general election, the requirement that early ballots brought to polling places be tabulated that same day is changed from may to shall. Right now, the way that the legislature defines terms, when it says may, it implies a choice that they can do it, they don't have to. And according to them, and I'm going to get a clarification here from Archie, but according to them, changing from may to shall says that they have to do it on the same day
Well,
without a choice.
I need to make a comment here because every county recorder or other officer in charge of elections may provide for, and not later than the 2024 general election shall provide for.
Right.
So-
Right now it's May, but after but in the 2024 election it's shall.
Well, and they should have taken May out. Go ahead, Archie. I'm curious.
We
both are.
I don't have a problem with that language. The problem I have with the other language in the bill, and of course this is not amending that, but basically what it says is that you will compare the number of votes cast with the number of people registered to vote in that particular precinct. What are you going to do if they don't match?
Yeah, but
There's
that's
no
not
provision in the
that's
bill
not
for what you do if they don't match.
that's not being addressed by the bill. That is part of the statute. That's not being changed.
Right, and that should be a,
I told you that it's not the part that they're changing that I have a
So-
problem with. It's
so
the other
we
part
can't-
that I
Right.
have a problem with, and they need to change that. If the number of votes cast in the precinct does not match the polling book for the number of people to cast a ballot in that precinct, what do you do?
what do you do?
So, I
Mhm.
mean, if all of a sudden you've got 5,000 more votes than you've got voters, what do you do?
Right, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Maybe we should let Mr. Messner know that we want to have another another provision, another bill.
And,
Well,
and
I'm
so
just
with,
trying to tell all of those people out there, you need to look at some of these bills sometimes because they're not clear.
and well, and because of that, I'm going to say, no, I'm not for this bill.
Okay, I am for the bill because the way that it's been interpreted, it makes it mandatory. The way that the legislature interprets the word shall.
Mhm.
We know that shall does not mean must, but they think so.
Mhm.
And what do you say on this bill, Archie?
I think the bill is okay. I mean, as for the amendment is concerned, I think it's fine. But it's the rest of the bill that I think that they
Right,
need
no,
to address.
It's the rest of the statute, not the bill. Okay, let's be clear.
Rest of the statute,
Yeah,
yes. Rest of the
the
statute.
bill, all the bill does is change that language. The
And-
statute.
And that's why I'm saying no, because in order for it to be clear, I think if he wants to put forth something, who introduced this, then he needs to make sure he does the statute correctly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why I'm saying no.
okay. Senate Bill SB 1245. Short title, VLT Cities, Towns, Counties. This bill is not going to be in the Senate Elections Committee for a change. It's going to be in the Senate Transportation and Technology Committee on Monday, the 13th. It was introduced by Senator Farnsworth. Now, I cannot make up my mind as to whether this is a good bill or a bad bill. Maybe you guys can enlighten me a little bit. But the way I interpret it, and it is a little bit convoluted, I had a hard time figuring out what it was trying to accomplish here. But if I figured it out correctly, and I may not have, but if I figured it out correctly, what it does is that right now, your vehicle license tax goes to the county in which the tax goes to the county in which it was collected, and then that is used to do whatever that county does with that money. What this bill does is that all of these revenues go to the state, and then the state distributes it according to population and I guess according to need as well. And I have a hard time understanding why it is better to have everything go to a central location, in which, in this case, the state treasurer, as opposed to the money being spent on the people that paid the tax. It's kind of a socialistic idea as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know if or whether I like this bill or not. So maybe you can, either one of you have any idea here?
And I'm with you. It shouldn't go into a general fund or whatever. Anytime money goes into a general fund to be distributed, like this says, due to the, or however the population is of the, no, this needs, if you are in a district, you pay your taxes there, that's where the money goes. And it goes towards that district or county. So
Well,
I'm not against this.
Two problems with it. It allows high population counties to subsidize low population counties, just for the reason the two of you said. But then the other thing that I find with it is, if you look at it, it says that it can be used for any purpose. What is it? Any purposes related to transportation. Right.
Which includes, guess what? Public transportation.
Not roads.
Not roads. Yes.
Not roads.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And it says that the cities and the towns can use it for basically whatever reason they want to use it. And it's my understanding that the vehicle license tax is to be used for roads, just like the tax on fuel is to be used for roads. And for that reason, I think it's, if they want to take that out of it, I think it'd probably be okay. But if they take that out of it, then there's not anything left in the bill, is there? Yeah.
No. And actually, I oppose both ways, both reasons. Number one, that it is to be used for any transportation purpose. And if the tax is based on my vehicle, okay, I want it to be used for my benefit.
Right.
Number one, and number two, the purpose. If I'm going to be paying a tax based on my vehicle, I want it to be used for roads, because that's what's going to benefit the vehicle. I have no business paying for trolleys or trains or whatever. So no, it's a bad bill. It's really. You know what? I think we all agree on this.
Yes, we
one.
do. I think.
Don't get carried away, Jose.
Yeah, folks, we all agree on this one. It's a bad bill. House Bill HB 2539, School Choice Failing Schools Notice. It's going to be heard in the House Education Committee on Tuesday, the 14th, introduced by Representative Pingarelli. And the purpose of the bill is kind of simple, although it's a convoluted
It
thing.
is.
It's so verbose. They should make these a little easier to read. But if I understand this correctly, all this does is that if you have a school that is failing, you have to let people know in the general vicinity that there are other alternatives, such as other government schools, or that they can take advantage of ESAs, or they can take advantage of STOs. The ESA is Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, and STOs would be school tuition organizations. Both of these provide funds for people to help them with paying for schools if they want to pay for the school. So basically, it's a transparency thing where you let people know that there are alternatives, that they do not have to stay with their D or F rated school. So to that extent, I think it's a very good thing.
In my opinion, also, I know that Tom Horn is focusing on the D and F schools and there's mechanisms to try that they have to account for why they're failing and so on and so forth. And I agree with this one and I think Kathy Hoffman did not like the school choice program and was trying to get rid of it. But I'm all for the school choice, and I like this bill for what it is written.
Yeah, well, the reason for the school choice opposition is that because they're in the pocket of the labor unions.
Right.
Because nobody in his right mind is going to be opposed to a kid going to the best school that he can go to.
Right.
But they would much rather have the child get a bad education as long as their cronies in the unions get their way. So,
Archie?
Well, goody. Now the schools have to say, your child is attending a school that just can't teach your child anything. And now you've got a choice. You can go drive 40 or 50 miles to another school, and if they'll accept your student, you can get in there. And they're a good school. Nonsense.
no,
Do
no, no,
something.
wait a second. Let's be clear about this. It very specifically mentions it's a 10-mile radius for a rural school and 5-mile radius for a one in a metropolitan area.
Have
So
you
you
ever
know-
known anybody that's tried to utilize that facility? Well, I do. And let me tell you, the school that the student may want to go to will tell you, sorry, we don't have any space for you. You just go back to that failing school. So therein lies the problem with this bill. There's nothing to make it mandatory that the school you want to go to takes that student. They have the right to reject the student. And they do reject the students. And the other problem with this bill is that it makes no provision to require the superintendent of public instructions to get rid of schools that are doing D and F, that are receiving D and F grades. Put some emphasis on it and make them come up to snuff. Arizona, for a number of years, has had a problem. Almost 40% of students graduating from high school in the state of Arizona cannot perform at grade level. They have to, whenever they go to college, they have to take remedial courses before they can attend college. Now, let me ask you, why are we offering college prep courses whenever we can't even put out a student that can qualify to go to college? It makes no sense. Concentrate on getting our schools up for where they are providing for the student for the education that they should have. Now, the individual student may be a totally different problem for any number of reasons, but there is simply no reason for not funding the schools properly and for not requiring the schools to perform properly. And this bill does none of that.
Right, and it's not intended to do any of that. The only purpose of this bill is to make sure that people are aware of the fact that there are other alternatives. That's all the bill does. And if you don't like the fact that it's just a small step in the right direction, that's fine. I like small steps in the right direction, especially under the current atmosphere where big changes will have big opposition. As a matter of fact, even small changes will have big opposition based on what we have now. I always look at a bill as to what that particular bill does. Does that advance the ball? Does that advance the agenda in a direction? And there's other bills. There is other bills out there. There's other movements out there, especially with the new person in the horn with the new superintendent of public instruction. That's a mouthful. For me, anyway, it is so the fact that we have in place some mechanism or some that something is going on trying to get rid of this D and F schools or making them perform up to snuff, that's a different issue altogether. All this bill does is say, okay, if you have one of these bad schools, then you should have the option of, at least you know that you have options. Believe it or not, sometimes people don't know that they have options. Now, it could be that you run into a brick wall when you try to exercise the option, but that's a different matter altogether. But at least the people should be informed, and that's all this bill does. It says you have to let people know.
To give you a non-existent apparent option is not an option at all.
But what if you can? What if you can get into one of those schools?
And what if you want to homeschool? I mean, there's options.
So anyway, this is just an information point, and that's all this bill does, as far as I can tell. And on the basis of that, I think it's a good bill.
I'm for it.
Okay.
but Archie is not.
House Bill HB 2705. Short title, Schools Safety Training Pilot Program. This bill is going to be heard in the House Education Committee on Tuesday the 14th. It was introduced by Representative Biasuki, and this is going to be a 4-year pilot program that orders the Department of Education to provide school personnel with training in threat recognition, threat response, firearm safety, etc. It also includes the purchase of equipment to carry out these functions. The total cost initially it will be $10 million, but it is exempt from the lapse clause. In other words, if they don't spend the whole $10 million, they get to keep it. They don't have to give it back to the legislature. Couple of things about this bill. I don't know of too many things that are more permanent than temporary pilot programs. You put the pilot program in motion and then try to get rid of it. Okay? It's nearly impossible, especially when that pilot program entails the purchase of equipment. What equipment? We're talking here about actually making the schools into a small or a mini urgent care facility, to treat people with have problems. And I don't see how there's any upside to this thing. I really don't like. I don't like this bill. And also, what is the? Are we experiencing an abundance of these traumatic experiences that we need to have a bill to spend $10 million to do this? I mean, what is that happening in our schools on a regular basis? I think that this is designed for pandemics. It's designed for mass shootings and that sort of thing. I don't see how it's worthwhile spending the money doing this, but you guys may have a different opinion.
You're next.
I don't. So I'm again both sides of this, but because I'm going to say yes, I am for this one because we are having more crazy people and more crazy students and so on and so forth. And there's more people. Our society is getting to a point that everybody's getting away with everything. I do think our schools need to be prepared for the mass shootings and so on and so forth. I agree with you on the pilot program. Once you start something, it doesn't go away. I don't know if I agree with that part of this bill, but I do agree that there should be, that the staff, the school administrators, and everybody should be educated on a response in the case of a mass shooting or something devastating like that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Archie?
Well, remember under the prior bill, we talked about, the schools were not being able to teach the students.
Right.
Well, and now, not only are we going to have the teachers that can teach the students, they have to go to school to learn how to teach a student, but now they're going to have to go to school to learn how to be a police officer, how to be a psychiatrist, and all of the other things that are required for this bill. So I got to develop it that includes the following: recognition of early warning signs. That's a police thing. That's a psychiatrist thing. Emergency response to threats. Well, now you got to make them a police officer too, because they've got to respond to an early threat. Does that mean if somebody's running up and down the hallways with a gun, they got to get out there and tackle them?
No, I don't think that's.
Well, read the bill and try to figure out what it is that they're going to be requiring the teachers to do. This is an absolute idiotic bill. There's the teachers can't even, they've got to go to school and haven't got enough education to teach the students, civics or anything else. Now they've got to be a police officer, a psychiatrist, and all other kinds of things. This is nonsense. then you have to understand too that this has a sunset clause of December 31, 2007, but it provides that we're going to give all of these schools $10 million to conduct this state. But if they don't spend the money, then they get to keep it. But if it's a sunset bill and they've still got money left over, what happens to that money?
Right, they keep the money.
You know, are they entitled to keep it because it's the money was appropriated for a specific purpose?
Right.
You don't
But now
have
the
to,
pilot program
Archie,
is no longer in
we don't have
existence.
to worry about that. As I said in my initial
know.
statement, there's nothing more permanent than a.
I know that, Jose, but I mean,
And-
this is a silly bill.
I
And
know.
listening to that argument, this is kind of why I'm not sure what way to go on
Well,
this one.
would it help you make up your mind if you realize that there's a red flag law out there that we haven't discussed yet? And it relates to juveniles in school?
Well, we haven't discussed it because it has not come up for a committee
I
hearing.
understand that, but there is a red flag law out there.
I know.
Yeah, so I mean, that covers all of this. The red flag law is gonna cover all of this.
Well, and that would be a bad law as well, probably, after I read it.
Oh, absolutely, it's unconstitutional. You can't lock somebody up without giving them notice.
Well, that's true.
Well,
Okay,
Oh,
so-
but then again,
So,
okay.
in a rare situation, we have Archie and I agreeing that this is a terrible bill.
Yeah,
That doesn't happen very often, does it?
not very
No, it
often,
doesn't.
no.
Okay. And
And I'm on
Gloria,
the fence.
you're in the middle.
Yeah, I'm in the middle on this
Okay.
one.
So we have Archie and I.
I'm trying really hard to educate Jose, but it's not working out good.
Well, you just did. You just gave me an education. It's a bad bill, folks, and we haven't stressed this enough. If you don't like the bill, or if you do, make sure that you react to it either by contacting your elected officials, your state legislator, or going on the RTS, the request to speak system, and offering an opinion. The whole idea here is that you people are informed so that you can go and make your wishes known to your elected officials. Senate Bill 1221, short title, Health Information Organizations. This bill is going to be heard in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee on Tuesday, the 14th. It was introduced by Senator Shope, and what it does is that it allows the state's official health information organization, HIE for short, to receive, use, and redisclose confidential information regarding child immunizations and communicable diseases only for the purposes permitted by federal law, and so on and so forth. This is a terrible bill, in my opinion. Under no circumstances should they be disseminating this kind of information, especially about juveniles. I don't know why anybody would consider this to be a good thing. This allowing of confidential medical information is really not a good thing, especially since there really is no need for it. We even if you factor in the last so-called pandemic, this was not the people that this applies to were the least affected by the so-called pandemic. So no, it's in my opinion, it's a bad bill.
And I'm going to agree with you on that. We shouldn't be allowing children, especially children's information, to go to anybody. That's private, and the only people who should be allowing any information is the parent. So yeah, I'm with you on this.
Legislature used the term nonprofit organization as though it's some kind of a holy grail.
Right.
I mean, a nonprofit organization, the only difference between that and a profit organization is that all of the money that comes in has to be spent in the same year, so that there's nothing to carry over as a profit. So you expend it on expenses, or you spend it on salaries. So, I mean, a nonprofit is nothing other than any other organization, except they don't pay taxes because they had a profit.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know why they're
Okay,
doing
so
that.
you agree with us that this is a bad bill?
Yep, I agree with you, the bad bill, but
Had to be a
well,
buzz.
there's no buts about it. You know, you agree that it's bad. We all agree that it's a bad bill.
I understand, Jose, but I mean, you know, we went through an earlier bill in which they said you can't use state personnel to enforce federal laws, and yet this bill provides that we're going to enforce federal laws.
Yeah, and that's why I was in favor of the other one and against this one.
Yeah, well, that's why I was against both of them.
Senate Bill SCR 1025, short title, Parents' Bill of Rights. It's going to be in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee on Tuesday the 14th, and it was introduced by Senator Watsack. Now, before we get into the bill, it would be a good time now to tell you a little bit about what an SCR is as opposed to an SB, for example. And this is a Senate concurrent resolution. And what this bill would do is that if passed by both chambers, it would go to the voters. It would not go to the Secretary of State. It would not go to the governor for a signature. It would go to the Secretary of State to put it on the ballot, and people would vote on it. And in this case, it has to, because it would be a constitutional amendment. That's the only way that we can amend the Constitution, is by the people amending it. So that having been said, I don't see a whole lot of reason for it, other than they're putting in the Constitution what is already in statute. If you go to the Arizona Revised Statutes, section
Title 1,
Title 1, Section 601 and 602, there is a Parents' Bill of Rights, and this Bill of Rights pretty much follows the same language. It's very similar language. So, is there a reason to put this in the Constitution? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys can shed some light on that.
I just can't even believe, and I've said this before, that I can't even believe that we're discussing a parent's rights. That we have to outline what a parent has the right to do to raise their own child.
Well, we do because we want to make sure, just like any Bill of Rights, you have to put it into law to make sure that those people who violate it would be punished.
Right, and like I said, I can't even believe that this has to be discussed. But with that being said, I agree with this, because a parent has the right to raise their kid.
Yeah, I could not find anything in the language that I would be mostly opposed to, because again, it's pretty much the same language as in the revised statute. It's just going to the Constitution instead. And one thing about it is that if it goes on the Constitution, it will be virtually impossible to change. So we can change by a simple majority of the legislature and the signature of the governor, we can change what's in the statute. But the Constitution takes the people to do it, and that's much more difficult thing to accomplish. So, but that having been said, Archie, what's your take on it?
Oh, I can't see any reason for this bill. You know, amending the Constitution should be extremely difficult and should be approached very carefully and not on a frequent occasion. And we already have in the statute, Title 1, Section 601 and 602, a Parents' Bill of Rights. Now, why do we want to move that from the revised statutes over to the Constitution? Well, supposedly because the Constitution is more difficult to change, but it's not impossible to change. There may be things that you need to add to the Parents' Bill of Rights that comes up at some later time that you want to add. Now, in order to be able to add to that Parents' Bill of Rights, you're going to have to amend the Constitution again. The Parents' Bill of Rights, as it's currently set forth, is more than adequate, and I see no reason for this at all.
So Archie is a no.
Very definitely a no, yes.
Yeah.
And even understanding that, like I said, I mean, this will have to go to the voters if it goes through everything. And I'm still going to go with yes. It's just a
Okay.
shame it has to even be discussed.
Keep in mind that we're not discussing whether there should be a Bill of Rights or not. What we're discussing is where it belongs. And I agree with Archie that even though the title of it is Bill of Rights, and we're used to seeing the Bill of Rights as part of the Constitution, this particular Bill of Rights, the Parents' Bill of Rights, it's something that it better belongs in the statute so that it can be amended as the time comes. Stuff in the Constitution should not be this specific to begin with. Again, the Constitution is kind of like a rudder, a guidance, not specific statutes. So,
See, folks, I'm making some progress. He agrees with me.
So are you going with a yes or a no on this?
well, I'm going with a no.
Okay.
Because again, there's no need for it, and it would make it more difficult to change if changes were needed. And no, Archie, you're not making any progress. I've always had that mindset.
And okay, and just listening to both of you, I'm going to change and say, no, I vote a no on this also. I'm going to go with both of you on this one.
Yeah, we have it. We already have a Bill of Rights in the statute, and I think it's a pretty good one, actually. Don't you think so, Archie?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's
The sad part about it is that I don't think there's enough spreading of the information to the public so that the public knows what their rights are under the Parents' Bill of Rights.
and some parents probably don't care.
Well, I mean, that's probably true too, but the thing that we've been dealing with here recently is the critical race theory, and under the Parents' Bill of Rights, you have the absolute right to say, no, you're not going to teach that to my child. So,
Okay, so we agree that this is not the end of the world, but it's not beneficial at all. There's no reason to have it, so all three of us are no on it. This brings to an end this week's edition of Arizona Bill Watch. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, please make sure you tell your friends, relatives, and anyone else you know. And make sure you tune in next week for another fantastic edition of Arizona Bill Watch.
Arizona Bill Watch, the show where you get satisfaction if you're not getting it from your state legislators.